Hey, what's up, tribe? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the TFC Audio Project Down Under. This episode is actually all about the concept of tribe. We delve into what having a tribe really means, the importance of quality relationships for our health and happiness, the difference between digital and analog interactions, as well as some practical tips to help you create deeper connections with your tribe.
This week's ep is brought to you by TFC Footwear. We've just expanded our range of barefoot footwear, so we've now got the full range of styles for Vivo barefoots for men's, women's, kids and toddlers. And look, to be honest, we really can't endorse these shoes enough. My Primus Lights are pretty much the only shoe I wear when I'm not barefoot. And if you head to our store today, you can grab yourself a pair at a discounted price. Just check out tfc-shopaus.com.
All right, you're back with James and Mac, and this episode is going to be all about tribe, which I guess is essentially just another word for community these days, but we like to use the term tribe as a bit of an homage to our ancestral background.
It's quite fitting.
It is, yes. And yeah, obviously humans are tribal animals by nature. From an evolutionary perspective, this was really a requirement for survival. We needed the safety and numbers that a tribe would provide in order to protect ourselves from dangers in the environment, so predators and weather and food scarcity and rival tribes as well, so enemies.
Yeah, of course.
You got to protect your tribe, and so we'd all help each other to make tools and build shelters, and
I guess it's just the way it worked, isn't it? If you didn't have that back then you wouldn't have survived.
Yeah, exactly. You needed to rely on other people, and they needed to rely on you in order to survive, because it's a harsh world, the natural environment. I mean, it can be obviously very beautiful and synergistic and connected, but in a lot of ways it is a harsh world, and in order to survive and in order for our species to survive, we needed to band together and create tribes.
And you utilise, I guess, everyone's skill sets as well to ensure the survival of the tribe as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. And so within tribes, obviously, different cultures and different countries and different peoples will have different examples of all of these.
Roles,
but generally, there'd be certain roles within the tribe. So there'd be tribal leaders and elders and medicine men and women, or shamans and warriors and hunters and gatherers and cooks, and obviously there'd be a lot of overlap between all of those roles as well, but the idea is that everyone contributed to the tribe in some way, and in return they were taken care of by the tribe, and there was no such thing as individualism. It was the tribe almost acted as more of a greater organism, kind of like a beehive, kind of thing, where everything's working together to create this greater organism, and I suppose that goes for the entire species as well. Yeah, but
it in itself was almost an ecosystem. Feeding each other and ensuring that every other part or every other person playing that role in the ecosystem was pulling its weight, but also was surviving and was looked after as well. Yeah,
exactly. And so throughout, it is always helpful to look at that evolutionary perspective and that more natural perspective, because we can see how our brains have been hardwired for this connection with other humans, and disconnection from the tribe historically essentially means death, or it's a genuine, the brain treats it as a genuine physical emergency, because if you are isolated from the tribe, you're so at risk of predation or being, or any kind of wild weather event or anything like that.
And I suppose it doesn't just go back to our ancestral links, but you look at any animal, if an animal, whether it's a wolf, for example, if they get split up from the pack, then their chances of survival are slim to none.
Way down, yeah. And so the brain really kind of freaks out. It creates a lot of stress chemicals and feelings of loneliness or depression or anxiety if you're separated from tribe. And it's interesting how that plays out, I guess, in modern times as well. And actually, back then, it's been documented that or back then, or even in tribes today, less modern, I suppose, tribes, then shunning or social rejection is a great form of punishment, or a severe form of punishment for members of the tribe who act out or who don't follow the rules or norms or practices of the tribe. They can be shunned, and that's actually one of the worst punishments you can receive.
Compared to a modern context where it is again still one of the most horrible, I guess, punishments you can receive, as well as a public shunning.
Yeah, public shunning, or we almost use a version of shunning in prisons and just isolation from society. Prison is obviously in most places, like, the worst punishment that people get. You get fines, or you get community service or something like that, or if you've done something bad enough, you go to prison, and that's like, you're no longer allowed to be part of society. You have to be part of this sort of, obviously you're still interacting with other people, but you are isolated from your family and from your community, and it's quite a big punishment. And even within those prison systems, extra punishment is solitary confinement, and so you get put into a cell where you don't get to interact with even the other prison inmates, and that's actually known and understood as a psychological torture, because it's so damaging to psychological health to be removed from other humans.
And so they would do that back ancestrally with tribes, still to this day.
It just ignore someone. Yeah, the whole tribe would just ignore them, and yeah, it was either, and I think they've seen that happen in horses and other animals as well. I remember reading in Frank's In New Old Way, I think it was, that they've identified that type of behavior in horses. Say if there's a really feisty colt, like a really colt that just won't settle down or anything, then the parents or the rest of the horse pack, or what is a pack of horses?
Is it a flock of horses?
Oh no, I don't know about a flock. Yeah, we'll look it up. The rest of the horses, basically, or especially the parents, will sort of ignore them or just stop giving them any attention at all, and then that brings that colt's behavior back into line, because anything is better than being shunned from the group. And so it's quite an interesting thing that's been going on for so long, and we really know deep down how bad that is for us to be shunned or for us to be ignored. Like, imagine if your family or friends just were like, they really disagreed with something you did so much that they just stopped talking to you. It's like, it's brutal.
Really, really brutal. Yeah. And I mean, we see it to a lesser degree online these days. It's probably not direct shunning. People don't make a deliberate choice to shun people, but that general, if people aren't getting enough likes on their photos or aren't getting enough interaction on their social media accounts, then it's almost the modern form of shunning. If people are not engaged with online in their tribe, their online tribe, that online shunning, I would imagine, would have the same mental health impacts that the physical isolation from community can have. Yeah,
and we want to talk about the digital world a bit more as well. But you're exactly right. And even cancel culture, this whole thing where, if a certain vocal group of people disagree with something someone said, or find something that someone said offensive, then they want to cancel them and take all their stuff off the internet and all. And it's like, that's kind of a version of it in a sense. It's like, oh no, you don't get the right to speak anymore. You don't get a voice. And obviously there is people can say horrible things, and if people are inciting violence or something like that, then obviously they shouldn't have the platform. But in terms of free speech and things like that, then being offended is quite a subjective thing. There's nothing is objectively offensive, because I might swear black and blue. Some people find it funny, some people won't care either way, and some people find it offensive. It's subjective.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a rabbit hole. But yeah, so over time, ancestrally, we obviously banded in relatively small groups of family and neighbors, and you're all sort of...
And I can confirm, for horses, it's a team.
Oh,
a harass,
you're kidding.
or a rag
A
of
team?
colts. Yeah,
Oh.
so for colts, we would have used a rag.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
Or a team. There you
Yeah.
go.
Those collective nouns are so funny.
Yeah, I swear someone just makes them up and chucks
Yeah,
them up
honestly, if you look up a list of collective nouns, it's actually I can't. There's one particular one that's really funny. It's like a murder of crows,
there. Of course.
like
Yeah.
things like that. Anyway, yet another rabbit hole. So yeah, I guess ancestrally and evolutionarily we banded together in small groups and relatively small groups. Obviously, it would depend on the culture and everything. And over time, as we figured out different food systems and developed more complex language and especially monetary systems, then we were able to form larger and larger groups into, villages and societies
And trade,
and
of
civilizations.
course, yeah.
And money was actually a big facilitator of that because you were able to. Money became the facilitator of a certain form of trust between someone. Like, we both trust that this money is a symbol of value, and so you no longer have to necessarily just be trading with someone in your tribe or in a neighboring tribe. You can share that trust with anyone who believes in the same type of currency that you've got.
And I guess it comes back to what we were talking about in the episode we did on stories about how I guess a tribe really is a group of people that buy into the same stories.
Yeah.
And money being one of those stories. They build a construct around the value of these coins, and
Yes.
then everybody in that tribe who agrees with that or that believes in that story, I guess by way of believing it, falls into that tribe as a wider community.
Yeah, very true. And obviously tribes would have similar religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs or spiritual practices, and all of those things. And so they would share technologies within the tribe, and so they'd have all these shared beliefs and goals, and obviously a shared mission of the survival of the tribe. And so over time, as we developed money and more complex language, and we were able to band together in bigger and bigger groups, then we had these bigger civilizations, and which then led to nations being almost a huge tribe.
But I guess then within those bigger tribes, you would see fractures of those tribes emerge, or smaller tribes within them.
Yeah, smaller communities. Yeah, exactly. And especially in those communities, I guess, arise out of the need for that closer human connection. Because sure, we might have 20 million people in Australia or 25 million people in Australia. There's no way you can connect with all of those people. You do share a currency and you share the law of the land, but
you share that safety, that safety that has been created by the power of the 25 million people within your tribe, and the lifestyle that you're able to live by being a part of that tribe. But yeah, like you said, the most important thing with tribe is that connection, and
is that closer, the close bonds, the really quality relationships, and that face-to-face interaction
as well.
Yeah, belongingness. Yeah, exactly. And some people might not necessarily resonate or really feel like they belong in Australia per se, but they belong in their family, or they belong in their neighborhood or their community, and that's what really matters most. And so it's interesting though that more and more lately, especially over the last decade or so, though we've been sort of less and less connected with those communities. Like they're historically, even in more civilized societies than with a lot greater people, than there was very tight-knit communities. And lately, or over the past decade or so, then there's been less and less of that close connection with community.
You only have to look at bowls clubs closing down and a lot of community groups that used to be thriving, places to be for people to meet and come together, fading out.
Yeah, and mind you, there's other things popping up, like fitness communities, and there's still other places like community gardens and things like that. But you really have to seek it out. It's sort of not a matter of course that that you join a community like that, whereas where it used to be, whereas now you really have to actively go, oh, well, I want to be a part of some kind of community, and you have to seek that out, and it's still there if you're willing to look and go for it. And in fact, because of the power of the internet, then there is a lot of different communities all over the place that you can access, but you have to actively seek it.
Where in the past there may have not been a handful, but the list of communities you could be a part of was shorter, and the path towards a community was probably clearer. But now, with so many choices and so much freedom to be a part of a community that fits you, you got to find it.
Yeah, you got to find it, and maybe there might be too much choice. One could argue. I don't know, but I also think historically a lot of the communities have been centered around religious groups, and so your church community and all of that was a very big thing for a long time, obviously. And
you almost inherited the community.
Yeah, and that was part of the community that your family was a part of becomes the community that you're a part of, and so on. And there are a lot of great aspects to that, but obviously there's been a decline in that for a number of reasons. And yeah, it's up to you and as an individual kind of to find a community that suits you. But in essence there, like, we can just see that it's pretty obvious and logical that human relationships and connections are really important, and they just feel really good as well. And you can when you're not feeling as connected with people, or if you are feeling connected, it's a inner feeling of more presence and happiness and joy in your life when you do have those close connections. And then more of that loneliness and sadness and longing for when you're not feeling connected.
And I guess school is probably one of the first places that we would get to experience that loss of connection, or the struggle to find connection. I guess up until that point, we've sort of had our hand held through and into the communities that we've been a part of, whether it's family or family friends, or even daycare and childcare and kindergarten before that. You're very protected when you were stepping out and trying to find a tribe that you'd fit into. And primary school and those early years where you're having to make friends and build a tribe that fits you. That's one of the first times I think you really get exposed to that possibility that you won't be included in, or won't be a part of a community, or you won't be welcomed into a tribe.
Experience that level of exclusion, especially if it's interesting how attachment styles play into it, and parenting styles, and how you've been socialized, I suppose, in your early years, and how that affects your ability to make friends, and so many factors that go into it. And we're not experts on that field, but it is interesting. Like, you can think back to school and think about the kids who maybe weren't as included, or would be picked last, or all of these things, and you can really understand how that would have affected their confidence and their desire to go to school, and
like you said, just generally how they felt.
Their
general mood and general emotions. You can see how that eats away at kids, and why so much focus is put on bullying these days, and anti-bullying campaigns, because it's the classic saying of the sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you. But it really is almost immeasurable, the impact that those early interactions can have on young kids.
And that plays out into the rest of your life as well. And I'm pretty sure Frank mentioned in New Old Way that there's studies around your attachment style, and how closely linked having a secure attachment style is to success in later life, in career and relationships and all of this, and how a non-secure or an anxious or an avoidant attachment style can negatively affect you. And again, we can't really delve too much into that in this podcast, but I was actually just listening to a Huberman Lab podcast. I think it might have been episode 13, but it's called The Science of Emotions and Relationships. So he goes into that a bit, and yeah, quite interesting. So I'd recommend listening to that. But yeah, it is kind of intuitive that human relationships, or the quality of your relationships, will affect your happiness and health in a lot of ways. But it's also good to delve into a bit of research to back it up and go, oh yeah, it's actually true. So yeah, in terms of happiness, well, this TED Talk by Robert Waldinger is about a Harvard study.
Yeah, it's really worth a watch. It's fascinating.
Yeah, so good. It's only 12, 13 minutes long, but he packs a lot in. And so he's basically the fourth director of this study at Harvard, which it's now 80 years old.
I was going to say 80, yeah.
At the time of the TED Talk, then it was 75. That was 5 years ago. So it's an 80-year-old study at the moment, which is a really long study. There's not many studies that go for that long.
I think it is the longest running human study on human
human health and happiness, basically.
Yeah.
So they followed this group of 724 men over 80 years now. And one group of them were Harvard College graduates who graduated around World War II, and then another group was boys or teenage boys from Boston who grew up in a very poor community, like kind of the poorest of poor, like no running water kind of setup. And they followed all of those men. I think it was every 2 years, or at least in the more recent study, I guess, design, it's been every 2 years, but they would follow along every 2 years and get all of this data on them, and the type of data that they would get would change over time based on what measurements were available, what tools and technologies were available, and also what kind of culture was around in the health sphere at the time. But these days, apparently, they're sending questionnaires about a bunch of different things to do with their life, and they interview them in person. They even draw blood and take brain scans and get all their medical records from their doctors, and they even talk to their wives and their children, and I think video them talking to their wives as well, and just get a lot of good, thorough, rich data from these men. And I think it's only, at the time of the TED Talk, I think he said 60 or maybe 70 of them are still alive, of the 724. And basically, what he says in the TED Talk is that out of everything that they've studied and come up with, and all of that data, the biggest conclusion they've come out from all of it over all those years is that good relationships are really good for our health and happiness. And so when they look at the men who've got strong social connections, so people with close bonds with their family and friends and community, they are actually physically healthier. And so they have better physical health outcomes in terms of, all your classic heart disease, cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, and all of that. They're cognitively healthier, so they have less cognitive decline, less memory loss, all of that, and they just live longer than those who feel like they want or need more social connection, so people who are lonely, basically. And what they also found, it's not just, the number of friends or the fact that they're in a long-term committed relationship, it's the quality of those friendships and the quality of those relationships that really determine how protective it is for their health. And so, they found that men, or, people, and they were studying men, so people in high conflict marriages is actually really bad for our health. So
surprise.
Yeah, surprise. And possibly, he said, even possibly worse than divorce. So, if you're in a bad relationship with high conflict and low affection, then it's probably not necessarily worth staying. But obviously, I think everything's individual. But the quality relationships, and he referred to it as people who felt like they could really count on each other when the going got tough, they were very protected of all of those things, and really slowed down cognitive decline and memory loss especially, which is really interesting. But I was thinking about it, and I guess how that would work physiologically, and it just does make a lot of sense when you factor in stress. So we
Yeah,
know
of
that
course.
stress and chronic stress especially, and we've talked about this before in the podcast, chronic stress is so closely linked to all chronic lifestyle diseases and well, just everything.
Yeah.
Our body is not cut out
To be in
to
that.
be chronically stressed and inflamed
Yeah.
and everything. And so a poor relationship or a lack of relationships and loneliness is a stressor. It's a major stressor on the body, like we talked about before. And with a lot of stress comes poorer sleep, poorer digestion. You're less likely to want to get out and move or work out, and it just plays into all other aspects of your health.
All these facets of your health.
Yeah, and that's why we talk about the 5 pillars of health, as part of the Foot Collective, and I know other people do as well. We didn't come up with it, but we talk about those 5 pillars because you can't separate. You can't say, oh yeah, like obviously food really matters and movement really matters and sleep really matters and stress really matters and relationships and community really matters, but they all carry over into each other so much. Your movement will affect your digestion and your appetite, and your sleep will affect how much energy you've got for movement, and so on and so forth. And in fact, Nick and I did a whole podcast on this on the TFC audio project last year, or maybe it was last year. And it's just very important to recognize how all of those things play together. And I think maybe people underestimate just how much the relationships can affect every other aspect of their life and their health.
And I guess we've touched on all of those other pillars throughout a lot of the other podcasts we've done so far. But there's a bit of a reason why we've left Tribe until the end. And it really is because I think it's one of those ones that ties a lot of it all in together, because if you don't have a tribe or you don't have any of those relationships, then the rest is going to suffer.
Yeah, major. And in fact, I think we haven't really, we haven't delved deep into food and sleep, but it's, I guess we've focused mostly on
food, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, we'll get Tom back on. He's a bit of a sleep nerd as well. And we will delve into those pillars a bit more as we go, especially with people who are more, I guess, experts in that field, because we could talk about it, but it's always good to get someone with more experience on the topic. But you're right, tribe, when you think about tribe, not only is it the stress, I suppose, of a poor relationship or poor quality relationships or a lack of relationships, but it's also the influence that you get from being around certain people who, if you're around, there's a quote that's like you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with most. So if you're around people who enjoy movement, like cooking healthy food, they like getting to bed on time, and they're just chill, and they're not trying to start conflict and things like that. If you're around those people, then you become more like that as well. And
we often talk about it also attracts those kinds of people as well.
Yeah, so the more you're like that, the more your vibe attracts your tribe. Is another cool quote. I don't know who it comes from, but it's pretty simple. Like, the vibe you put out and the energy that you bring to life will attract people who are attracted to that energy. It's super simple. But if you if you say you want to lose weight, or you want to start a movement habit, or you want to get more sleep, or you want to stop drinking, or you want to stop smoking, probably one of the biggest things, aside from anything to do with willpower or even environmental design, this is kind of environmental design, but the biggest thing is just removing yourself from the people who do those things, because that if you're around people that are eating junk food or smoking or drinking, you're going to be a lot more likely to do that. Or if you're around people who are overweight, then it like they've done studies that show that will inhibit your ability to lose weight as well. And if those people are your family, that makes it a lot harder. It's not easy to cut people out of your life, and it's not necessarily all about just cutting people out of your life willy-nilly, but it's about really taking note of what the people in your life, how they contribute to your health, and maybe how you can, create what's the word, boundaries, or create more distance, still see them, or make sure they know that you value them, but that you're trying to make a change in your life, and all of these things. It's very context dependent and very,
of course,
very individual to the individual situation, but it's very important to note that how much your tribe will affect your ability to maintain certain behaviors.
And even in a work context as well. I mean, if you're working in a stressed out office where everyone's stressing and that is from the very top, then it's very hard to avoid having that flow into your own state. Because if everyone's stressed, it does, that vibe feeds on.
It's the culture. Workplaces can generate a certain culture like you found in your job. And then the difference when you've come to, I guess, a workplace.
Yeah, of course.
With a completely different culture. And so, in one sense, we're somewhat restricted by what we're born into or what we've found ourselves in terms of career or lifestyle. But in another sense, we are the creators of our reality, and we can, once we know, okay, my vibe affects my tribe and my tribe affects my vibe, then there are things that you can change.
Yeah.
Even if it feels helpless, or even if it feels like, I can't cut them out, you just find things that you can change about that.
And a lot of it is just taking that step back and having that sort of third person look at.
Take a bird's eye view
of your own vibe and the vibe around you, and work out if that's the tribe that you need to be in.
Yeah, exactly. And like we were saying before, the beauty of the internet today, I suppose, is there are so many tribes out there that you can connect with and choose to be around certain people more, and maybe even invite your old tribe, or invite your friends and family who you'd like to change with. Invite them along too, and then if they're keen, then that'll be great, and if they're not, then you'll just start spending more time with the people who are more the vibe that you want to be around. So it's not going to be easy necessarily, but it's a very important step in terms of sustainable change in your health and in your life. And so I guess that's your vibe attracting your tribe. And then in terms of the loneliness, which we touched on before, just how there's actually been studies that have shown that acute loneliness, so I can't remember the exact study design, but it's basically when they took a bunch of people and they do these, there's a name for the way the study is designed, I can't remember, it doesn't really matter, but it's where they have like a beeper, so someone gets a beeper, and 9 times a day this beeper beeps, and the person has to write down what they're doing, how lonely or connected they feel at the time, and maybe 1 or 2 other questions. But the idea is that, oh no, that's right. They write down what they're doing, how lonely or connected they feel at the time, and then they spit into a saliva tube or something like that. So it sounds like it's pretty interesting study. And they've found that when people are feeling lonely, their cortisol levels spike. And so that means they're stressed. Basically, cortisol is a stress hormone. And so your stress levels are way up when you're feeling lonely. And this is what we talked about before, the brain experiencing loneliness or rejection as a genuine physical emergency. And they found that it's actually similar levels of stress hormones as the threat of a physical attack.
Wow.
And so, that's a very interesting thing. And then, like we said before, with the chronic loneliness leading to chronic stress, they've found that people who are chronically lonely has similar effects on their health in terms of how much it increases risks of disease and everything, as smoking around 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
And can increase all-cause mortality, so the risk of dying by anything, by about 50%. And again,
imagine if you removed yourself from a tribe where you were smoking 15 packs a day and still feeling lonely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can't just remove yourself. You got to find other tribe. But it is fascinating, but it does make sense in terms of that chronic stress. And I mean, I feel I've always been quite blessed in terms of having a strong family connection, and I've always been surrounded by good, supportive friends, and I guess haven't really experienced that type of loneliness. But it is a harsh reality for a lot of people, and it's actually getting quite a lot of quite a magnified view now, this concept of loneliness, because it is such a killer, and it is so
And of course,
proven.
COVID
Yes.
gave us the perfect sort of capsule to experience that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a big push during the lockdowns. I mean, again, we've been very lucky here and haven't had the lockdowns that they've endured overseas. But even for the brief windows that we were locked down, there were real genuine concerns for old people, for the elderly, who at the best of times didn't have much connection, but now were completely cut off from family and friends, and
like, don't
completely
visit old
isolated. And they employed people, volunteers, to go and just talk to the elderly.
Yeah.
And the fact that they created a job for that underlines how seriously it was being taken.
Yeah, because it is very well studied. It's a serious killer, as being lonely, and at the stats that I looked at, I'm not sure if this is taking into account COVID or whether this was before COVID, but if you look at the American stats, the Australian stats, and the UK stats, they're all about 1 in 4 people report feeling lonely at any given time, and that's a fair
lot of people.
whack of the population, and that it might actually come as a bit of a surprise when you consider just how well connected we are these days, connected in inverted quotes, because all these digital technologies are about to help us connect. We can text, we can Facebook, we can Instagram, we can like people's, we can see people's photos, and we can do all these things. And how are people feeling lonely when there's so much connection?
Yeah, the sell is that open any app and you won't feel lonely, but
yeah,
quite the opposite's happening.
Exactly. And so that's where we really need to consider the quality of the relationships, not just the quantity, the amount of friends you've got on Facebook or the amount of people who follow you on Instagram, or the frequency of interactions. So yeah, you might be texting people all the time, or you might be, Insta DMing and all of these things, but you're not necessarily getting that quality interaction. And this is where that digital versus analog thing really comes in, because there's a great book actually called Digital Minimalism that I've finished at the start of the year and really, really enjoyed it. He goes pretty deep on the whole topic. So recommend reading that. But essentially the idea with this concept is the brain obviously craves connection. We, as humans, crave connection. And historically and evolutionarily speaking, connection was only through face-to-face interaction. We didn't have another option. We couldn't call someone on the phone, and we definitely couldn't text them for the vast majority of our evolutionary history. And so these face-to-face connections came with not only words, but body language, facial expressions, voice tonality, often touch, and countless other physical factors and just energetic vibes. They've even found lately that your heart will give off an energetic vibe that can travel a lot further than just the edges of your skin. I think it might even be like 3 meters or something in front of you, and there's all these different energetic and physical factors that will come into a human interaction when it is face to face that you definitely don't get through text. And you'd get to a much lesser degree through, say, like Zoom or Skype or whatever, or FaceTime. And I mean, even smells. I think apparently it's up for debate how much humans really rely on pheromones and stuff. But we do know that we're responsive to smells, and there's even studies on where they give people a T-shirt that has been sweated in by people who've either run, so they've run and sweat in this shirt, or they've jumped out of a plane and sweat in this shirt. And they take brain scans of the people that smell the shirts, and the people who smell the ones that have jumped out of an airplane have greater activation of their amygdala, which is the fear center in the brain.
Wow.
And so there is something in smells that will affect our brains and will be part of the communication, even though a lot of it is subconscious. And they're not smelling it going, "Ooh, that person was fearful."
Yeah.
But there is activation of those centers, and it's really interesting. All of these almost unquantifiable factors that come into a face-to-face in-person interaction that we really just get pretty much none of in most of the digital interactions that we get.
I guess when you look at the generation before us then, and a generation that has relied so heavily on these digital outlets to build connections, I think it'll be really interesting to see what tribes look like in 15, 20 years' time. I know we're going to get into what we think is needed and what we believe is important about maintaining and being part of a tribe, but I'll be really intrigued to see these kids who have built a lot of their friends through a screen, and I mean we already see it just with young kids not even being able to talk to a stranger on the phone, or to approach someone in public or
even talk to their friends on the phone. There's some of the younger generation like, "Oh, don't call me," like it just texts. It's like they can't handle being called to chat about something on the phone. And I think we just kind of scraped through when we went through.
Very lucky.
Just missed out on having a smartphone for our whole lives. But they are really, smartphones these days are really extensions of our brain, and they really affect how the brain works. I was at dinner last night. I was looking at some old photos, and I almost went to zoom in on this printed out photo by moving my hands. I was like, oh my gosh, like
wow.
My brain is just cut out for digital stuff, and everyone's is really these days, unless you're a hermit. We're just used to these digital technologies as an extension of our body, really, and of our brain and our nervous system. But that does really take a toll, and I think there is a lot of research now going into just how much of a toll that takes on the mental health of teenagers and kids, especially when they're relying so much, especially going through puberty, and popularity is such a big thing, and even just humans in general, the social hierarchy is very important from a primal perspective of wanting to be high up in the social hierarchy, and now we have this quantifiable way of how many likes did I get on my photo, how many comments, how many people are engaging with it, and this very weird, unprecedented level of quantifiable, like you were saying before, like, oh, I didn't get enough likes on my photo, like, or this person got 200 and I got 10, and then you take the photo down, or you get down about it, or whatever, and it might not be that person who got 200 likes might be feeling really lonely and not have any close connections, and you might have a really good close friend, a couple of close friends, or 10 close friends who all like your photos, but you all hang out together in person, and it's not a very good indicator of how popular you are or how strong your relationships are. In fact, it's probably a terrible indicator. And the scary part now is that these technologies, yes, they're social media and they can help connect, but they're actually designed and specifically engineered to be addictive. And they even get in like slot machine engineers and use similar algorithms or similar processes to give your brain the dopamine bumps that are literally physically addictive, similar to taking a line of coke or or like some kind of drug or cigarettes or alcohol or whatever. It gives you this neurochemical storm of like, oh, that feels good. Oh, I got a like on my photo. Oh, I got a comment, and I'm not immune to it. Like it's very easy to get sucked into that. Oh, I wonder how many people liked this and everything, and it is they're wired. Those technologies are engineered to do that, and that because they're so addictive, society in general spends so much time on them, and that takes away from the human interaction, the actual face-to-face interaction that you can get.
And I guess this sort of comes back to what I was saying, is you do wonder what it's going to look like in the future, where these young brains are hardwired to get that hit, that satisfaction from likes and shares and comments on their content, rather than a genuine interaction in person, and being able to read those senses, being able to read someone's face, their voice, their smell, and get the satisfaction from that face-to-face interaction. And you wonder at what stage the benefit, the emotional benefit that one-on-one interaction has will be outweighed.
Well, I think it's being outweighed already. I mean, if you look at the rates of depression, anxiety, and suicides in teenage populations are skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And they've skyrocketed since I think it was since the rollout of like accessible smartphones. As soon as everyone started getting smartphones, and obviously that had the accessibility
Facebook,
to
really, yeah.
Instagram and Facebook, then these mental health conditions skyrocketed, and it's not a coincidence.
No.
Sure, there's other factors around sleep and nutrition and movement, and all of these things play a role. But when you look at yes, it's correlation, but physiologically it makes sense why those things would be skyrocketing in response to those. And if you want to get really messed up, you can watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix, because they open the kimono on
scare the shit out of you.
just how much these companies put into controlling your attention,
keeping them on the hook,
and it's a really common dilemma for parents who they don't want to isolate their kids by taking their phone away, because these kids, if their phone gets taken away, if their Instagram account gets deleted,
it's public. It's almost shunning.
It's shunning. They treat it like a full social isolation. I can't interact with my friends. Like, what do you mean? Like, I need this.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I was getting at. Is you're right. It has overcome the in person.
Yeah, because
the weight that it's put on it.
Yeah, and even these days. Oh, the other day I was at dinner. It was a while back, but I was at dinner and interacting with a bunch of friends, and I'm very, very purposeful with not having my phone.
I'm conscious as well.
I put it face down so no notification comes up, or I put it somewhere that I can't see it if possible. And I'm quite purposeful about that. And then I see it was a mother and a daughter. I think the daughter would have been a teenage or early adult, and they were both just on their phone the whole time. They didn't interact. They didn't talk. They maybe talked to like decide what they wanted for dessert, and then they were back on their phone. It was mind-boggling to me, but that happens so much. It's like we'll be together, we'll hang out, but we'll just be on our phones doing Instagram, like connecting with other people who are not there.
Yeah, there's countless examples, but even on the weekend, hanging out with my younger brothers and a few of their friends, and a couple of the girls that were there, same thing, had their phones out the whole time. And even when they were interacting with each other, it was centered around what was going on the screens of their phones.
Yeah.
The core of their interaction, and it was a bizarre interaction to observe, quite removed from it, but watching one of the girls take a video of the other girl and then show it to the other girl, and then the other girl be upset that she'd even thought of taking this video, and the vanity and the issues that surrounded that. But it was all because this interaction that they were having, almost like it wasn't a fight, but a disagreement, that all centered around this device that they could have easily just not used because they're both there.
Yeah.
But they were too worried about what everybody else was probably thinking about them online, rather than being present in that face-to-face moment that they could have been sharing with friends. Yeah,
and you can see how anxiety builds up in that way of like, I wonder what people are thinking of what I've just put out. Like, maybe I look silly, or maybe I said something wrong, or and and you're putting it out to all these people. Like, in one way that's really powerful. You can, if you have a good message to spread, you can put it out to a lot of people. But in another sense, if it just opens you up to a whole lot more criticism, and you can see how that would play into anxieties and things like that. And yeah, it's unfortunate that we've come to a point where we can be literally in the same room with people we value and love, and still have a tendency to want to be on our phones and be connecting with people who aren't there. And again, I'm not trying to get on a high horse and say like, oh, all these people are lame because they're doing it, but I've noticed it a lot in myself. And you do really have to actively stop yourself or find practices of not doing that. Like, because I'll be with family or friends, and the tendency to, I want to check my Instagram. I wonder how many likes I've got on that photo that I posted. Oh, okay. It's like, it's tough. It's
real hard. And
unless you're actively focusing on it, it's really, you can see how you just
second nature. And I think like the only answer is to, like you were saying before, it's an extension of the body. Well, if it's an extra limb, you've just got to cut it off. Like, you've literally got to not have it around you and not have it in view, to properly disconnect. And
exactly. Yeah. Face down, on silent, no notifications, and just be fully present with who you're with. And that can be, it is, and I know how much better I feel when I do that. And when I catch myself being about to reach for the phone, I'm like, no, I don't need it. It's just a habit. It's just my brain seeking a dopamine bump, and I don't need that. And then you get that deeper satisfaction. Yeah, maybe you do get a little dopamine bump from ignoring it as well, because you're like, yes, okay, cool, I win. Back into presence. But it's a constant practice. And I think in Digital Minimalism, Cal Newport, who's the author, he talks about really, like, he's very big on don't use social media unless you really have to, or only, like, really restrict what activities you do on social media, and don't use likes and comments as a replacement for human interaction. And be very wary of just how much time you're spending on it, because it's amazing how much time you can spend scrolling if you're not aware of it.
And I guess after all of that, we'd like to encourage people to join our tribe through social media.
Yes, exactly. So all of that being said, quit social media if you can.
If you can. But if you're still on it.
We do know that these tools can be really great. These technologies can be really great tools for connecting with like-minded people in your local area or all across the world. And they do open up a really great potential for finding a network of people that are on your wavelength and that maybe share a common mission or a common goal. And the Foot Collective is a great example of that. I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you about all this stuff if it wasn't for Instagram and me liking a few pics and on the Foot Collective's Instagram account. But the difference is, or I suppose the important part, is not to see it as a replacement, because what I then did was reached out to Nick, organized a call, talked to him face to face, all of these things that actually facilitated a proper connection that then allowed me to go, well, I really want to take this to Australia or help spread the message in Australia.
And I guess that is the key, is reaching out.
Reach out to people and use them as a tool to connect, but also to facilitate the face-to-face interactions. And obviously in person is best. But if you can't do in person, then, face-to-face on Zoom or FaceTime or something like that, or even a phone call is much better than text or email, because you get voice tonality and it's more real time. But there's levels. I kind of like to think of those face-to-face interactions and the things like body language and facial expression and voice tonality. They're kind of like social nutrients that your brain gets, and social media, or the likes and the comments that you get on social media, are kind of like the junk food of social junk food, where you get that dopamine bump but it just leaves you wanting more, and you're not actually fully satisfied and everything. So if you can, a little bit of junk food here and there is fine. Your body can tolerate it, but you need to focus on the true social nutrients, the whole food social nutrients of quality interactions. And so I guess that brings us to the practices that we would recommend. And so I think above all else, it's just find as many ways as possible to connect in person, especially with your close family or friends, or your partner, without digital interference. So when you're not on your phone.
And so I guess, like you said, it's okay for it to start with you reaching out to a community or to a group or to a tribe online, but ensuring that you're taking that next step and crossing into the physical realm.
Yeah, and if there's people that you already, you don't necessarily even have to find a tribe online. If you've already got people that you love and value in your life, like family or friends or a partner, then it's just about going, okay, how can we really maximize the time that we're spending together? Minimize the amount of interference from digital technologies. Don't be scrolling your phone while you're on date night, or purposely organize activities with those people that are, non-digital activities, where you are talking and conversing and listening to each other and all of this. And I mean, a really great example that I've found really powerful in my life is our Thursday night family dinners. So we started this 4 and a bit years ago now, I think. And it was when my cousin moved up to Brisbane with her young daughter. And we said, oh, well, let's get together on Thursday nights. It was me, my immediate family, the Dooners, and Maddie and Mia. And then we just thought, oh, well, we could invite some more of the extended family, or invite a family friend. And then it just became this thing where every Thursday night, whoever could come would bring a meal. We'd have a different theme every week. It would be, Japanese or Italian or Greek or whatever. And we'd choose a different theme every week, and we'd hold hands at the start of the meal. And, it became this whole tradition and a ceremony. And I just found I've reflected on it so much, and I've talked to my family about it a lot too, is just how powerful that is for maintaining connections with people you value. Because otherwise you can go months without seeing your aunties or your cousins or even your siblings sometimes, if you don't have a regular thing like that. And something like that. Again, it doesn't have to be this grand traditional ceremony, but some kind of regular dinner or family dinner or catch up. And, I know with our friends, James and Brooke, like, we have fam dinner nights, and they're not like fully regular, but they're a thing. It's like, oh, should we do a fam dinner? And then we go down and we cook dinner, and we, and even catch up. And
I mean, the move and play sessions that we hold every Sunday, the last Sunday of every month.
When we're in town.
When we're here.
When we're not away for workshops, we like to hold these move and play sessions. That means all of these digital connections in the Instagram etherworld can become physical connections, and they are so fun. And people love getting together to move and play and connect in person, and it's just so much more rich than a like or a comment. And you get to actually know someone rather than going, oh, that's that person's Instagram page.
It's really funny, again, taking that third person step back and that bird's eye view, looking at the people who come to these move and play sessions. And it's fascinating because, you're almost looking at them as their Instagram handles.
Yeah, and that's this person.
Embody.
At Made Method, at Embody.
But then you see all of these people who, I guess, comment and interact in the TFC community online, and then to see them interact in person, it's so nice to see.
So good. And then a lot of cool opportunities come up as a result of that. Like Embody, Pat, we ended up having a great podcast on his channel, which is a really great channel. Highly recommend checking it out. But we had a great chat, like 2.5 hour chat just sitting here in this lounge room, and then, you know, he's going to come out to Bush One at some point to help with the working beers. You just open up these connections with that you wouldn't have otherwise. And, you know, similarly with, you know, there's been customers that we've called up about, you know, an order that needs changing, or some shoes that didn't fit or something like that. And you actually create a connection, and you get to know, oh, this person sounds like this, and they, you build that more human connection, which would allow you to have a more in-person interaction as well, and then that opens up opportunities for more and more of that. And it's a practice. Sometimes it doesn't come naturally to people, or you get out of your comfort zone a little bit in order to do that. But once you do push past that little barrier of discomfort, it feels really good, and it's very, you can't replace that.
Of course.
Regular catch-ups, you know, even if it's just with a mate for a hike, or a games night, or park sessions, things like that. It doesn't have to be a big move and play session. It could just be going for a walk in the park, but purposely allocating time for that, and purposely not being on your phone while you're during that time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if you can't do that, or if you've done enough of that and you want more, connecting with new people in person where possible. So, you know, joining a sporting team, or some kind of community orientated movement or fitness. You know, we've talked about this before in terms of creating sustainable movement behaviors in your life. Then having a community of people around you that like movement, or like the type of sport or movement that you're into, then that's the best way to get into that, obviously. And then you can actually make great friends through that as well, and good connections. And, you know, there's a app called Meetup now, where you can go, oh, I want a group in Brisbane that meets up to do hikes. Cool. Boom. Brisbane hiking meetup. And then, you know,
and there you have it.
So, you know, just becoming a regular somewhere, and integrating with a community that you feel is like-minded. And obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, then you're probably like-minded with the Foot Collective, and, you know, we'd love you to reach out to us and to integrate, and to, you know, come along to one of our sessions, or our workshops, or our move and play sessions. And we just love that. We love hearing from people who want to chat, and we're always down for a chat. We can always slot something in.
And it's not for us like a gimmicky throwaway term that we use, tribe, to describe the community that we have. But all of those ancestral values that we were talking about at the beginning, the important things that made up a good tribe, that's what we're trying to create. That's what we want to create. And we can't do that just by ourselves, I guess. You know, exactly. and we value the people who have really thrown themselves into our community, and you know, have made themselves a part of it. And 100%. We encourage more and more people to do the same, because it feels really good when we have those interactions, like you said, with customers and people that come to workshops. And they don't necessarily have to buy a product or come to every event, but these are people who continue to engage with us and continue to maintain that relationship.
Yeah, it's that presence. And also, you know, we can only connect with so many people day to day, but the beauty of it is how it's a real global community now. And if you've been to the same Foot Collective workshop as someone else, or you've got, you know, the same beam or something, there's a connection between two people who would otherwise maybe not have met, who then could go and hang out and do a beam session or something like that. And so it becomes quite a scalable thing where, you know, yes, you can connect with us through our events, but then through those events, you can meet other people who you might be able to connect with. And that's, I guess, the idea of the Facebook community group.
And also, I guess the Mighty Network that Nick's building.
Yeah, which is
now.
the bigger project.
And I mean, it's out there now, and it's on its way to being built. But what the Mighty Network is, the Foot Collective's Mighty Network is an online city almost, where the members of that community are accepted into that community. They're invited or accepted, and it's a safe space for people to speak freely and to share their beliefs and their thoughts and their health and movement journeys in a place that isn't being controlled by Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and isn't being controlled, I guess, by marketing and advertising dollars to keep your eyeballs there and to keep you clicking and to keep you scrolling.
Which is a really cool concept.
Yeah, it's a great concept. And
without all the distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It cuts out all the bullshit, really, and just lets tribes do what tribes did tens of thousands of years ago, and that's share stories and support each other and help each other survive.
Yeah.
But in an online platform. And I guess that's the other avenue that, while we do use Facebook and Instagram a lot, and that's how we connect with a lot of people, that's where we'd love to one day see a really strong TFC community.
Yeah, on there. And then, and it just, we just love, like, I love our community in the sense that now we can run an event and we get 20 people along and everyone has fun together and they get involved. And I think that is just so special, and it really, it's humbling to have that many people come along and want to learn and share and connect. But it just makes a lot of sense because that's exactly what we're wired to do. And especially when you add play into the mix, playing and connecting is like a ultra combo for physical and mental health, and it feels really good and it's fun. And so, it's really exciting. I mean, I pinch myself all the time that's part of, like, that's the job that we do, or the business that we have is to help facilitate that, because that's exactly what we love doing and it's exactly what the world needs more of. And so I guess, I mean, these days as well, we want to be cognizant of the fact that COVID has greatly restricted how much people can interact face-to-face. So we've been able to do these events and workshops and move and play sessions because we're quite lucky in Australia in terms of the level of restrictions we've had. We mind you, we have just had a Melbourne workshop needed to be rescheduled because of COVID. So it still affects us, but I know that a lot of, like we've said, a lot of other countries in different levels of lockdown, and you might, listening to this, you might be isolated in your apartment where you can't go out and go to events like this or whatever. And I'm very much hoping that is a short-term thing, however that works. But in the absence of the ability to connect in person, then jumping on a Zoom call or jumping on a phone call or anything like that, like we've said before, it's still good. It's still great. It's still, if you can just understand the levels of communication, and text or email is like the lowest level, and in person with, no mask and full touch and all of that stuff is like the highest level. Then just work based off what you're comfortable with and based off what your restrictions are currently.
To do. Yeah.
And if that means that all you can do is talk to someone on Zoom, then do that. And I mean, I know I'm probably preaching to the converted here, but there's just, it's very important that you are doing that and channeling that connection through whatever platform possible, really.
Yeah.
And that's actually also what we want to start doing more of with the podcast now, is opening it up to more. We've sort of done a bunch of podcasts that really get our philosophy across in terms of what we're trying to do with the Foot Collective and TFC Australia. And
I guess let potential tribe members know what this tribe's all about. It's really been a good guide to what this community is all about and what we want it to be all about.
Exactly. And we've had really good feedback actually from we really appreciate anyone who's listening from 1 to 9, or what are we on now, 9? 10 maybe. Whoops.
Number 10.
From 1 to 10. Really appreciate anyone who's listened all the way through, because it does give you that full perspective on what we're about and what we're trying to achieve. And the people who have listened to it have been saying it just resonates more with them about what we're doing, because you can only get so much across an Instagram post. And when you hear a full conversation and really the topics get explored properly, then you can really get what is like what the mission is and what we're really trying to do. And I've found that with all the people I've listened to on podcasts, and Nick's podcasts, and Align podcast, and Aubrey Marcus, and these people, you really get to know and trust what they're doing. And so we really appreciate anyone who's been listening, and if you're only just tuning in now, then I think it's be a great idea to listen to all the ones beforehand. If what we're talking about in this one resonates with you, then probably all the other ones will too. And now we want to start opening it up to more of the foot nerd community and other people in the TFC community who are doing cool things, and we may have to do some of those through Zoom because of certain restrictions and just time restrictions as well. It's easier to do it through that, but
we'll be, I guess, like you said, delving into topics like food and sleep and feet as well.
Feet, stress. Yeah, we've got a bunch of cool people who are doing really cool things in all of those spaces, and we've got a really great opportunity. Digital technology has a great opportunity for us to connect with those people, record a conversation so that you can listen in and get something out of it. And
if you guys have a concept you want us to explore as well, feel free to reach out and send us a message or an email, and we'd love to hear your ideas, because again, this is a
collaborative platform
for you, for the whole tribe, to get across what they want to get across and to learn about what they want to learn about.
Exactly. And we really like the process of researching and distilling a concept that we can chat about. It's not as simple as just chucking the mics up and having a chat, even though I guess in some cases it kind of is. It's almost that simple. But we really like delving into a topic and figuring out what the main points should be, and really exploring. And so if you have an idea of what we should explore, then we'll probably like exploring it. So please get in touch and let us know. And obviously, if you're enjoying the podcast, a rating on Apple Podcasts is always helpful as well. But even just reaching out in any way and letting us know, because we love hearing from you. And I guess we can pretty much wrap this one up there.
I think that'll do it.
Cool. Catch you next week.